Donald Trump is weakness masquerading as strength. This is a guy who likes to present all tough and macho and masculine, but he's not strong, and especially as of late. Donald Trump is in very clear decline, both mentally and physically, and it makes him look as pathetic and weak as he is, with his slurring words, his false memories, his late-night bleats, and that is exactly what we just saw from Trump after his health crisis was yet again exposed by Governor Wes Moore. Yes, Wes Moore is hitting back at Trump again, and Trump is melting down because of it. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into Trump's freakout at 3 a.m. last night on Truth Social because his inability to walk was exposed, I want to start with the guy who's been calling out his weakness, calling out how pathetic Donald Trump is for the longest time, and who really upsets him doing so, as Gavin Newsom.
You have the largest private police force in the world. When they're done with this, all that funding and that big, beautiful portrayal allows more resources for this private police force that increasingly is showing a tendency not to swear an oath to the Constitution, but to the President of the United States. And he'll be sending them to voting booths and polling places all across this country. This is a real and serious moment in U.S. history. And by the way, I say that as an American, not as a Democrat. Every Republican should be ashamed about this and scared to death about not just these authoritarian tendencies, but these authoritarian actions by the president. He is weak. He's weakness masquerading as strength. And that makes him more dangerous than most people believe.
There is no strength to Donald Trump, especially no will to actually govern. Of course, it's good that Donald Trump doesn't want to get anything done because everything he does in his administration damages the very fabric of our country, but he's not focused on long-term goals. That's why Donald Trump couldn't actually bring down crime in D.C. One, because he doesn't want to, and two, because it takes real thought and effort. That is what Democratic governors, Democratic mayors have actually done, and Wes Moore called all of that out in this clip right here. It's what eventually led to the late-night posting meltdown from Trump.
So here in D.C., there are guardsmen from 6 different states on the street. The mission is, quote, beautification, duty, and support. The defense secretary has authorized them to carry M4 and M17 rifles, but to date, we have not been able to locate anyone armed within the National Guard on the streets of D.C. Why, though, are you so opposed to this deployment?
One, it is not sustainable. You cannot continue this type of pace of operations, particularly when it's costing over $1 million a day in order to do this. The second, it's not scalable. You're not going to be able to do this in every single major American city, particularly when many of the cities that have the highest crime rates are the places that have actually deployed their National Guards to Washington, D.C. So who's going to go do the work in their cities? The third, it's unconstitutional. It's a direct violation of the 10th Amendment. And if for a party that talks about state rights, it's amazing how they're having such a big government approach in the way they're conducting public safety. The fourth reason is because it's deeply disrespectful to the members of the National Guard. You know, as someone who actually deployed overseas and served my country in combat, to ask these men and women to do a job that they're not trained for is just deeply disrespectful. And so when we're thinking about all of these lasting factors, when we're thinking about the fact that it serves as a distraction from the fact that the president's disastrous economic policies are making everything more expensive for everyday Americans and making life harder for everyday Americans, there is a multitude of reasons that I am against this, and I will not authorize the Maryland National Guard to be utilized for this.
There is no need for the assault on D.C. that is currently happening at the direction of Donald Trump, at the direction of Stephen Miller. This is unnecessary. But of course, it is just a stunt. Now, it's not a stunt that we should call a distraction, say the mainstream media needs to cover something else. No, it is a stunt for Donald Trump to pretend like he cares about crime. Of course, he does not. Donald Trump wants to use this as a precedent to go into Baltimore, to go into Chicago, to go into Milwaukee, to go into Detroit or Atlanta. He is using this as a part of a plan he is rolling out to continue to take over our government and use it to serve himself and serve his billionaire buddies, because that is all Donald Trump is ever after. He is not strong or tough. The man can't even go on a walk in Baltimore, and it's not because he's scared of the crime, it's because he just can't walk. Donald Trump's decline is another example of how pathetic and weak he is, and that's why Wes Moore calling it out had Trump posting this last night. Trump rages at Nemesis being disrespectful about his memory in Late Night Meltdown. Donald Trump spent the early morning hours digging up year-old dirt on his newest political enemy and bashing him on social media. Wes Moore of Maryland has become the latest Democratic governor to take on Trump over his partisan gerrymandering and his threats to deploy the National Guard to blue states, inviting the president last week to walk the streets of Baltimore with him. Trump responded over the weekend with a social media rant in which he threatened to pull federal funding from Baltimore, leading the governor to mock the president's physical ability and lack of military service. In response, Trump made the bizarre claim on Monday that the governor had called him the greatest president of his lifetime. On Wednesday, Moore slammed Trump's absolutely comical memory, a comment that apparently left the 79-year-old president still angry hours later. Just after 2 a.m. Washington time on Thursday, Trump reposted a year-old article from The Hill about Moore apologizing for mistakenly claiming on a 2006 White House fellowship application that he had received a Bronze Star. But is that the end of his political career? He was very disrespectful to the office of the president, Trump complained in a Truth Social post. The New York Times reported in August 2024 that Moore, a U.S. Army veteran who deployed to Afghanistan from August 2005 to March 2006, had listed the Bronze Star in his application despite having never received the reward. Moore, who received several other honors, including the National Defense Service Medal, said it was an honest mistake and claimed he had included the honor at the encouragement of a senior officer who recommended him for the Bronze Star. My deputy brigade commander felt comfortable with instructing me to include the award on my application for the fellowship because he received confirmation with the approval authority that the Bronze Star was signed and approved by his senior leadership, Moore wrote in a statement posted to social media. In the military, there is an understanding that if a senior officer tells you that an action is approved, you can trust that is a fact. Later, he was saddened to learn that he had not received the Bronze Star, he wrote. The commander in question confirmed the version of events to the Times. So Donald Trump, the Bone Spurs guy, is attacking the service and the record of Wes Moore because Wes Moore mocked Donald Trump's inability to walk. He is living so rent-free in his head, it's not even funny. But of course, Donald Trump is going to come up with any petty excuse to go after anybody because he wants to intimidate. He knows he's weak, he knows he's pathetic, so he has to intimidate. But the latest example hasn't gone too well, because in D.C. at least, no one's putting up with Donald Trump's BS and his BS attacks on our good friend, the Sandwich Man.
There's a video you may have seen of a guy named Sean Dunn, a former Department of Justice staffer and Afghanistan veteran, who lost his temper and threw a Subway sandwich at a federal agent while protesting Donald Trump's takeover of the Capitol.
Another
That happened earlier this month. Dunn was initially detained and then released. Now, I think it is not a good idea to throw sandwiches at people. I don't think Dunn should have done that. But the response to the sandwich throwing incident from the White House wasn't just disproportionate. It was absolutely unhinged.
An individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there, stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
According to local news report, Dunn repeatedly tried to turn himself in upon seeing what a big deal the White House was making over his case, but he was unsuccessful. Instead, his arrest was the subject of one of the most deranged propaganda videos I've ever seen in my life, certainly ever seen put out by the U.S. government. It looks like a scene from Narcos or maybe a Paul Verhoeven film like RoboCop. What appears to be about a dozen heavily armed FBI agents and U.S. Marshals with body armor and riot shields storming a luxury condo building in Washington's West End to detain a guy in jeans who is obviously not resisting in any way, all because he is accused of throwing a sandwich. And here's the kicker. Today we learned that federal prosecutors were not able to convince a grand jury to charge him with a felony. A group of his peers simply refused to buy the government's ginned up case. And to be clear, in normal times, it is extraordinarily rare for a grand jury to refuse to approve an indictment. The deck is heavily stacked towards the prosecutors in these situations. There's the old cliche, right? You could get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. And yet, the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. could not get a grand jury to indict a guy for throwing the sandwich. This isn't an isolated incident. Earlier this week, we learned that that same U.S. Attorney, Jeanine Pirro, last seen on Fox's The Five, that her office similarly failed to get a felony indictment against a woman who's alleged to have tried to block ICE from detaining someone. Not one, not two, but 3 grand juries refused to sign off on felony charges in that case. Eventually, Pirro just gave up, charged her with a misdemeanor instead.
I guess justice is now a dish best served at Subway. Really great marketing for them. But this is just, and always was, a PR stunt by the Trump administration, busting this guy's door down with like 20 thugs for a social media video. It's nonsensical. But that's what they're going to do. PR stunts. They're not actually after keeping you safe. And Wes Moore, of course, continue to call that out right here.
So once again, the president's showing that this is not about policy. This is not about supporting your people. This is not about what it's going to do to port workers and small businesses. This is an ideology. And it's a deeply dangerous ideology. And frankly, again, something he's talking about pulling that he did not give us in the first place. And that's why I tell our people, do not let someone take your power who did not give it to you in the first place.
We cannot be a little squeamish in the way that we talk about crime. We can't qualify everything. I feel like Democrats do that so often. Well, I know Trump is invading D.C., he's taking it over, and he's a fascist, but, we care about crime. I don't want you to think we don't care about crime. Donald Trump doesn't care about crime. Just say that. You care about crime? Donald Trump's not solving it, and he's not trying to. Don't fall for it. He's a liar. He's lied before. We're actually going to work to make sure you're safe. That's simple. We didn't pardon 1,500 cop-beating insurrectionists who have reoffended like Donald Trump did at the beginning of his administration a couple months ago. How about that for crime? That's your response. Don't qualify. Hate that. Stop it. Seriously. Democrats watching, please. Thank you. We're going to keep calling that out. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.